Hey,
Kevin!
how you doing, Lauren?
Hey, hi.
Hi, nice to see you.
It's great to see you. Thanks for jumping on this thing.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. My
No
pleasure.
trouble. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
we've been passing each other in the halls for years.
No, I
Yeah.
know it's amazing. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for asking me to do this. It's very nice. It's flattered that you would have me on, you know?
When did you start teaching at Berkeley?
Well, it's funny. I started doing it about, I mean, I think recently, I think I'm going on 20 years.
Hmm.
I'm going on 20 years. And but I taught actually before that too, because I had started doing like 5-week programs when I was fairly soon after got out of school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I did some of those, and I did a bunch of those for a few years, and that was fun. And then I taught for a while back in the ancient days, but then I stopped for a while because I went on the road. I was on the road with Paula Cole
Right.
and playing with her and working with her for years. So that was a really good time and a great period of my life. And then the opportunity came up again later, so I took it. And so now it's been about 20 years. It kind of blows my mind. I can't believe
Wow.
how fast that's gone.
Yeah. So that had to be around 94, 95, maybe.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. You got
Because
it.
I started teaching at the Big B in 1984.
Yeah.
So this is the end of my 40th year.
You did. Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
And I'm just a little older than you. I just turned 64.
Yeah, you look like 20 years younger. You look 20 years younger than
I
me.
think it's because I wasn't on the big road. I was always on what we call
Yeah.
regional roads. I only did regional touring, a couple of out of country, out of state, across the country, but not endless. I don't know. That's always the
It's
joke when
all,
someone comes back from touring. They go,
yeah.
"Why don't you look older?" I'm like, I don't know. Formaldehyde, formaldehyde, maybe. Right.
Exactly.
But yeah, I've
Exactly.
always loved your musicianship. I've always loved your respect for the song. Not very many people who can play as beautifully as you can play, and all the instruments you play, support the group and feel the group energy and admire the collaboration. Like a lot of people are in music and it's such a competitive thing, and I've never understood that because I wasn't in group sports and stuff, or
Yeah.
any kind of sports really. So I
Totally.
yeah, I mean, how did you come to that? Were you always sensitive to that, or did that come
Well,
from experience?
I think it was a combination of, I think it was a combination of things. It's like, thank you, by the way, for saying that. That's very nice. And I really do appreciate your saying that because that is something that I care about pretty deeply, and it's like it's a hard, and I know you're the same. You come from the same head. And I think a lot of it probably has to do with that I grew up listening to and loving, loving songwriters and songs. And, I mean, not everybody does. Everybody loves songs and songwriters, but I
Not
love,
really.
well, not necessarily, right? Yeah, that's
Some
kind of
people just like shredding, and
yeah,
playing as
exactly.
many notes as they possibly can, right?
Exactly. True. And which is, it's just like for me, I loved songs and I loved to just get right to the point, I loved the emotional content of songs.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate all that stuff. I appreciate shredding. I love it. Actually, I love it. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I love watching people that can do it. I love the same thing, and I really love all the different things, and I get it. But for me, for whatever reason, for better or worse, I was always attracted to playing a role in a song and like being part of the song, being part. And I love that. It just it's in turn it just makes me happy for some reason. I don't know exactly why, but I like being part. If I love doing like a subtle thing, if it gets noticed by by guitar players or anybody for that matter. If it gets noticed, cool. If it doesn't, cool. It contributes to the song. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And and I really love subtle stuff like that. And I know that's going to be lost on some people, but I don't care. You know what I mean? So
It sounds to me like you love details. Like I love details. That's why I'm a recording engineer and a producer and all that stuff. I
sure.
mean, the way things blend and how you can move things around. I mean, I can hear just one chord and get goosebumps or cry when those arpeggios come in just the right way with that little bit of flange. And
Yeah,
I'm just in awe of that stuff. I love painting with sound. And to me, feeling something
yeah,
from it is what it's about. And as much as I can appreciate the dexterity of all kinds of things and other styles and stuff, sometimes it's just only one emotion, and I have to be in the mood for that. Most of the time,
yeah,
I'm in the mood of all the other subtle things, you know.
yeah, yeah. That's basically that's sort of exactly where I'm coming from, you know. And
Mm,
I love all the different elements, and I also found that over time, like I realized, like I realized that if you're one of the things that people like an audience, I think, has a tendency. An audience will appreciate everything, but I think oftentimes the thing is that there a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people are very focused on the singer and the words, you know.
mm-hmm.
So I kind of found that like I felt like I also played better in situations if I just shut up and listened. Right? You know what I mean? Like if
Sure.
I listen to the if I don't play for a minute and I just listen, singer singing, and I've heard other people like a lot of I've heard other brilliant studio set players. I don't mean that I'm brilliant. I'm saying people that I grew up idolizing say that they said, "Well, you have to listen to the song. You know, listen to what the singer is singing. What are they singing about? Like, what's the song about? Is it some you know, some people, I mean, when I was a kid, you know, honestly, when I was a kid, I just heard people singing. I didn't necessarily listen to what they were saying. You know what I mean?
Me too, till this day. I think the frequencies and the sound of the band hit me first. And
Yeah.
then it could be decades later that I go, is that what they're saying? You know, like I
Oh,
never even, I can't sing and play the song. It's not some one maybe that
totally,
I've performed, so I don't know the words at all. But the words were so secondary,
totally.
unfortunately, even though I write a lot of lyrics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I heard Joni Mitchell when I was a kid, when I heard
Mm,
Joni Mitchell, I so loved the sound of her voice. I just
mm-hmm.
loved the sound of her voice so
Yeah,
much that she was saying these deep things, but for me, her voice was just like an instrument, you know, not
yeah,
just. It was like that was more than enough for my brain to handle at that time. Like I don't
right.
even know if I could have handled. Like I would have like imploded if I'd really been able to
If you
focus
took
on
in
the
the
lyrics.
magnitude.
Yeah. So I got it. So over time, I got it. But just the sound of her voice it was and still is so beautiful that it was, you know,
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
that's enough, man. You know, I mean, I can't even handle the words. Like, what you're saying.
I
So,
know.
like, so I also found that if I listen to what the singer is doing, I still will play too much. Like sometimes I'll be listening and I'll still play too much. Like because sometimes I'll even feel like I haven't done anything. I should do something. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? But then I
Sure.
kind of think, well, not really. I don't. Maybe I don't need to do anything here. You know, and really, if you're in the studio, you never really ultimately know. You have to just go by your intuition and your best instincts, and hope that that's the right thing. You know. I mean, that's the way I do it. I just kind of go, well, you know what? I'm. This is what I'm hearing, and hopefully, this is the right thing. I hope
Yeah.
it's, you know, I or
In
I,
this,
you know, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, in this moment, at this time, this is
Yeah,
what it feels like is right.
exactly.
It's energy, right? It's frequency, so it's a moving target, really. And of course, you're going to feel differently on a different day when you're a different person in a way and in a different moment. But it doesn't make that other moment wrong. And I think that's what a lot of people get confused with when they're players primarily and they're afraid of the recording studio. To me, it's just a snapshot. It's not this is how you play and that's all you are forever. It's just, it's a moment like a
Man,
Polaroid, you
I
know.
so agree. That's really, I do, I so agree with that because it's like, it's just like this is what you were feeling at that time. And to the best of your ability, you tried to do the right thing. And I feel like if I do that, that's gonna get me, being
Mm,
honest, right? Like I could do something more, I could do something maybe more complicated or more, that takes up more space or brings attention to me more. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
But at that moment, it's like very few of the people that I admire as players do that. They always play for the song. I mean,
Yeah.
in in many different styles of music too, even whether it's jazz or I think like my favorite players have a tendency to play a little bit, maybe more focused on the what's that word? 'Cause there's so many different ways of looking at that. I'm just saying what I like has a tendency to be a little bit more economical,
Mm.
and maybe that's just what I like. I don't know. It's not a right or a wrong or a better or worse. Although I do think that
Right.
there's a certain amount of. I think music is in a I think we're in a highly a period of where there's a hyper attention to um, you know speed and like doing incredible things. It's almost like
Mm.
music is sort of becoming like an extension of video gaming.
Yeah.
Where it's like everything's a level to be achieved, and you achieve that level of, okay, I got that level, like I can do this fast. Isn't it amazing what I can do? It's so amazing what I'm doing right now. Now I'm going to do it on bass, and now I'm going to do it on keyboards, and now I'm going to do, aren't I amazing? And it's just like I watch that for like 30 seconds, and I'm just like, here's like, I mean, it's great that you can do that, but would you ever want to hear that? I never remember the songs or the music, and that's not to say
No.
there aren't people doing amazing music. There are
Yeah.
amazing musicians right now. Young musicians are doing
Yeah.
like staggeringly amazing music, as good as it's ever been. But
Yeah.
then there's also that element of where I think there's a lot of people obsessing about you know, it's like a game. It's like a game. It's like music is a game. Sort of. Some things that I faster, higher, and I guess that's always been there. I mean, that's always been there. I think. And
I suppose when you hear people flexing every muscle, though, for every moment of every song, the question that comes up in my mind is why? Like, because the song wasn't even asking for that just yet.
yeah,
And I think you're bringing up some really interesting points because I feel like guitar players and piano players, especially, are brought up to be virtuosos, because we're one of very few instruments that can play the whole song ourselves. So, especially if you're a Berkeley performance major, especially in the old days, it was like Berkeley's circus freak guitar player because you can sound like three guitar players at once.
sure,
And we're
right,
playing classical pieces with a pick, and we're doing things that are just almost superhuman.
yeah,
And I remember even Mark French saying to me, who was one of my teachers at the time, go home and record this because I don't think you understand what you're pulling off here. You're so busy doing this that you don't even understand how it sounds. It actually sounds like two guitars, and this other one sounds like three guitars. And I was amazed because the arrangements were so gorgeous. So I love the fact that guitar can play more than one note and less than six. And that's what you do so beautifully is this counterpoint and speaking back and forth to the other instruments and responding, but you yourself are receiving what the group is doing. You're feeling it and you're giving it back and putting it with everyone else. Like you're communicating with them in such a beautiful way that it transcends, like the whole group is magnificent, more magic because of all the players that you choose to play with that are very similar in taste and frame of reference. And
yeah,
so the other thought was if like I think bass players and drummers almost have it a little more lucky in a sense because they're desiring to play with people right from the very beginning. Guitar players are just playing their fingers to the bone all the time that they forget that it has to fit in somewhere. So even when my students come in and play something absolutely amazing, I want to say, okay, but where are you going to put that? Like, how are you going to make that actually be something that
Yeah,
exists in a something you can release? Like, what is this? You know?
totally, totally. And I really I feel like that's sort of like where our job as teachers is to try to help them.
Mm,
I think like people are gonna do what they want to do, right? You know?
absolutely. And no reason why they shouldn't. In fact,
Yeah, and so I would never, and I know you wouldn't. I never discourage ever in a million years will I discourage somebody from trying to master their instrument completely, and I am all for that, right?
yeah.
Just as long as within that complete mastery of attaining that, you know, you are able to call the musicality out of it and realize what situation, like there's a time to play like that, and then there's a time not to play like that. And that's, and that's completely within, that's our choice of our choice of our beautiful choice of free will, right? You don't have to do that, right? You don't have to do that, and that's fine too. That's great, so I don't get. I think when I was younger, I used to be frustrated and bugged about these things, and I'm not anymore. I look at it, it's just part of getting older. I'm just sort of accepted. It's taken me my whole life, really honestly, to kind of accept myself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, like I know that a lot, I mean, my insecurity says, my insecure mind says, I know that a lot of guitar players won't find this particularly impressive or interesting, but
Mm,
I like it, you know,
yeah. Yeah.
I like
Well,
it, you
I
know,
think that's our, yeah.
yeah, so, and I'm good with that. And I think that's the key. That's where you got to get to. It's like, you kind
Yeah.
of got to go, I like this. And I think for some people, that's very easy. They have that right from the beginning.
Mm,
But, for me, it's taken me a long time to kind of figure out that I like more quieter, subtler things. I think. I
hmm.
obviously if I'm in the mood and things are kind of rocking, I'll definitely go for whatever, even if it means
Hmm.
failing miserably. You know what I mean? Which is part of playing. Take
Yeah.
it. And that was one of the other things that I loved about music when I was a kid was that I loved artists that would go for things even if they wouldn't always get them. I loved that. I felt that so exciting, and I still do. Yeah, you know what I mean? Because they were going for it and trying. And I think that's that. Like I that sense of adventure, and I think like all those things should be promoted, and go
Yeah.
for it and
Yeah.
try things and explore and all of that. So I think there's a place for everything, but for my little teeny slice of the musical world, I found a place where I'm comfortable,
Hmm.
and that's what I like.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think that's what we're
like,
all needing
yeah,
is to just find your place. And I feel like everybody's gift makes room for them. Like you don't have to fight and claw for it, and you don't have to compete for it. And I know they try to make it seem like it's battle of the bands or battle of this, and there's a competition for that prize or whatever. But
yeah,
when I get up on stage, it's like I'm so not competitive. I noticed it in high school. There was all of a sudden a class about the debate team, and we went to this thing and listened to the folks, and it was like point, counterpoint, and I thought, I would never be able to keep up with this. As fast as my brain works and as fast as I can talk and think and all that stuff, those aren't things I care to be debating or worrying about. And when it came to music, I just thought, we're comparing taste. This isn't this is good and this is bad. And I think that's the change that students are trying to make as they come from a world of your parents know everything and they're trying to keep you alive. So this is good and this is bad because that could really hurt you. So listen to me. Versus now you're in a world of taste and you have to develop your wisdom as to when and how, and does it support the whole, and what was the goal? Or, there's nothing wrong with somebody calling attention to themselves here or there. But for me, if I'm on stage, it's like, it's not about, look at me, how great I am. Oh my God, I'm a Berkeley Circus freak guitar player. I just love this thing. It's been my best friend my whole life. And this is what I love to do with it. And I really don't care what you think of it or not, because I love it. And it still gives me goosebumps, and it always has, and it probably always will. Like I, I,
That's,
I get
that's
so
it.
weirded out by the other stuff that I think I got to stay away from that. It doesn't make any sense to go there.
That's the whole thing. It's like, to me, if you can get comfortable with yourself, if you can get comfortable with with yourself and work on those things that you love and value, and do it with like a kind of a laser focus, then
Love and passion.
yeah, and that's the way to go. And I think, I almost feel like you can't go wrong, because even if nobody ever likes, even if, I keep
Mm,
talking about what other people think,
yeah,
which in reverse would appear that I totally care what other people, but you do to some degree, right? To be
yeah,
honest, you want people to like what you do, right?
sure.
I, you want, but at the end of the day, ultimately, you got to try to make yourself happy. And
Yeah,
if
you're
you
doing it for
yourself
you.
happy, you might, the odds are better that if you play for yourself and for whatever that is, whether you're a shredder or whether you're playing parts in a band,
Absolutely.
if you're playing parts, or you're playing, coming up with soundscapes in the background that are super subtle and nobody will ever really notice them, but I mean, they will notice them, but they won't necessarily notice whether it's you doing it or a keyboard, whatever.
Right, right. Like
You
the stuff you do on pedal steel. I mean, lap steel.
That's so right. And it's like, so the thing is to try to, I think, I mean, I'm just saying, obviously, all I can talk about is what I think, is that try to make yourself happy, you
Yeah,
know? And if you do that and somebody likes it, great. But
exactly.
if you're trying to play for other people, uh, and I'll tell you, I'm saying this. The reason I say this over and over again is because I need to remind myself of this constantly. You know what I mean? Like, I
Sure,
do.
we all do. We all
Yeah.
do.
Right.
Because it's part of tuning yourself and getting ready,
Yeah. Totally.
you
Yeah.
know? So if you can connect with it and be your best self there, someone is definitely going to connect with it. But everybody's picking up on energy. I mean, you can tell when someone is for you or against you, or is in opposition to you, or is doubting you, or any of that stuff. And you can't get through to them. Like they have a block up, kind of a thing. So it's not about impressing them. They're determined and have already decided that you're not going to impress them.
That's true.
And I go, great, because if I ask for 50 people for their interpretation, or I mean their opinion of what I'm doing, I'm going to try to adjust it 50 different ways to try to please all those people, and end up chasing my own tail and not be satisfied with the result anyway.
100%. That's the way I feel. Yeah, I
You
agree
know,
with 100%. I think it's like, and I feel like I've gone down. I feel like, I mean, I've just come to that from going down taking every wrong possible turn I could have taken, because I also think that that's important. You have to figure things out. And for
yeah,
me, I tell my students, it's like, you know, stop getting mad at yourself and just take your time. You're gonna make mistakes. It's part of learning. And so just accept the mistakes that are happening and try to fix it. Just keep trying to fix it, and eventually they'll get fixed. But
yeah.
the frustration part of it is, everybody wants things to happen overnight. Wow, your studio behind you was so fantastic.
Oh, it's a fun playground, I must say.
And that is so great. Look at
Yeah,
that.
so there's the computer side, and then there's all the outboard gear, and there's a tape side or a hybrid side if we want that. And then there's an acoustic piano over there, and a whole slew of guitars and amps, and then a drum set in that room. And
It's amazing. That's such a
fun,
good.
fun, fun, fun,
So
fun.
I don't even want. I won't even. I can't bear to show that the complete, like psychotic mess that surrounds me.
Oh, I
Guitar.
have those rooms too. I'm just not in it right now.
Okay. mine looks like a giant like guitar and amp bomb went off in my basement, and this is just everything that's left over. But
Well,
it was
yeah, I used to have my gigging gear, and that whole setup was separate from the recording
yeah,
stuff,
exactly.
certain different from the teaching stuff. It was just like, ah,
And the pedal boards that are in a constant state of changing because you decide that you want to put some pedal on it, and you rip it off, and then it's like, ugh,
I know. And it's like I always wish everything was just ready to go. But it's like
yeah.
you pick this one up and you haven't played it in a while. It's like, oh, I got to set the intonation because it's not ready to go.
What guitars have you been playing lately? Have you had? Are you were you playing some Gretsch's quite a bit for a while? Do you
uh,
have memory of that, or is that a false memory?
I think you've seen me probably in pictures with some. I have a country classic junior that's
Oh
adorable
yeah,
that I,
yeah.
I do
Gotcha.
like.
That's
But
what.
recently I got an orange wood parlor size that's
Oh yeah.
amazing,
Yes, yeah. Those are I've
really
never.
nice.
They're nice guitars, right? I've heard about them. I haven't played one, but well, that's great. That's cool.
Super nice. And then there was a company that I saw on eBay that I was wanting to just get because they had some blue options, you know.
Ah,
Johnny Smith and the man with the blue guitar.
the guitar, yeah.
I love blue and I loved Johnny Smith, and I've been recently trying to get a bunch of blue guitars, and so I found this company called Wolf, WOLF, and they were so inexpensive, but they were copies of all kinds of beautiful things. So I have a Les Paul over there,
Oh,
that's a
wow.
blue burst, and then I have another one that is, what shape is that one? Oh, it's just like a 335. But I couldn't believe that the company that I bought it from on eBay, I wish I knew the name of the storefront or if it was them exactly. They just said, we'd love it. Sure, buy both. We'll give you a deal. And how would you like those set up? What kind of gauge strings would you like on it? And how high would you like the action? Are you going to play lead on this guitar? Do you want to play just, chord melody? What are you going to... Nobody's ever asked me that. In the history of my playing and buying and selling and trading over
Yeah.
probably 160, 75 guitars or something, like I've had so many different kinds and I love them and I get different things out of them and write songs with different ones and
Oh
feel
yeah.
inspired by them. And then here this company is the first one that says, we recommend this gauge or we recommend this thing. And they come perfectly intonated and they play gorgeous and they look incredible. And they're like,
That's
$480. You're like, what?
yeah. It's so funny. Yeah, I feel like every time, like three or four of the last guitars I've gotten have been like I got the guitars and then I had to the first thing I had to do is either take them into the shop to get them to get the, you know. So it's like, well, okay,
Yeah.
so that's the guitar. Now here's another $400
Well,
for
yeah.
basically
It's
making it playable. You know.
it's like high-end recording gear. You can't just walk into a store and find it. You can't touch it and play with it and see it. And most of the guitars I've ever wanted to try, like I've yet to have the experience where I walk into a shop and go, I just fell in love with this guitar and I have to buy it. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But I
Totally.
usually try something online and then ship it back or sell it or trade it with something
Yeah.
else.
You
And
know what? I'm with you. There's only been a couple of guitars of mine that I played them immediately and was like, wow, this guitar
this is mine.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I would have done anything to get it, you know. I would like whatever. You could hold on in my car, whatever you need to, here's my
Here's my
guitar, the
collateral.
most valuable thing I have. It's So yeah, the guitars. It's funny speaking of Johnny Smith. So funny you said that because I just heard, and I know it was he did a beautiful Moonlight in Vermont. Didn't he
Oh
do
yeah, I was playing that when I was 16 years old in front of the entire high school.
just love that.
I love that version.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so elegant in in the whole arrangement. The way he does it is just so beautiful. I just heard it in my playlist like last night. I
Wow.
was having a glass of wine and it came out. I was like, oh my god, it's so
It
beautiful.
just it just rings and sings. And I mean, this is the thing that is upsetting sometimes, is that folks will pick a guitar because of the exotic woods, and they'll pick a guitar because of the incredible pickups, and then they'll do some kind of strenuous thing because they heard that they should use thicker, thicker, thicker strings. And it's like,
Like,
I use very thin strings and very heavy picks.
Yeah,
And I get this really fat tone and all these beautiful sounds, and the thinner strings ring longer. But of
yeah,
course, if you're playing fast and staccato,
yes.
that physics doesn't matter to you. You're looking for, but I want people to hear the pickups. I want to hear the wood. I want your strings to work. I don't want all your notes to be fretting out and to get such a buzz out of the amp that you don't realize that you should EQ it differently because you've got a frequency that's, really taking off, and we need to attenuate the mid-range, and they don't understand the low mids, and everything's all muddy, and you're like,
Yes.
oh my
Yeah.
God, look,
Yeah.
these things are all affecting all that expense that you just spent on this beautiful guitar that you're not getting
Yeah. The most
the
out of it.
benefit from, the most out of. Yes.
Yeah. I really, I know. I have been so. It's. The older I get, the more I feel like there are so many. But I enjoy it. It's like sometimes I'll overthink things like this, and I'll like short circuit myself. I'll be like, this guitar is great, but oh my God, then there's the pedals and the amps, and there's so many things. Like I just wanna pick up a guitar and have it sound good, you know?
I know.
But then I kind of go, but all that other stuff is fun. Like my favorite thing, I'm like, and I'm sure we're all the same. I know, but like my favorite thing to do in the world, the most relaxing thing is peruse gear. You know, I mean, I love looking at guitars and amplifiers and
Yeah.
pedals. It's an endlessly entertaining thing for me. Like, I mean, of course, watching music and like YouTube's the greatest thing in the world for me because I just can't believe like things that when I was 14 years old, 15 years old,
Yeah.
I would have dreamed. Like, remember that? Like, there was no footage. You couldn't
No.
see your favorite bands play. You
No.
didn't know what they looked like.
No.
You didn't know what they looked like when they played, what they moved like. You know, and it's like it's still like kids have grown up now with that's just oh here's your favorite guitar player doing a slowed down breakdown of their solo, like how did they do that, and I'm like, that's amazing. That's amazing. that I'm still amazed by it. I'm
I
still amazed that you can do that.
I wonder if you and I would have been as detailed and passionate about getting good at guitar if we had had YouTube, or if we would have been distracted. Like so much
I
Beatles
gotta
stuff
tell
and
you.
James Taylor, I would have been just eating it up, and maybe I wouldn't have been practicing as much.
That is a great question.
I
I
don't know.
think about that all the time because there is. You know what I think? I My feeling on this is that the kids that get it early on do that, take advantage of that, and it's wise, right?
It's like compound interest. We got in on it really early.
Yes, and I think that there is that thing, with as we get as we have things. The thing is that I think that younger people are doing that because I personally think that the level of ability on instruments of a lot of young folks that I see
Yeah.
is amazing.
Oh,
Like,
that's good because I haven't been seeing those students.
I see it, it's not everywhere, right? Not all the time.
Yeah.
When you see a kid who's really taking advantage of all the resources that there are,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
amazing. And because
Right.
they're like going, well, here's this Pat Martino solo that I can slow down and watch a video of his hand playing it, or or I can get a close-up footage of how Joni Mitchell played some crazy tune. I always talk about Joni Mitchell. I loved Joni Mitchell when I was a kid, still do, but I would remember hearing her guitars, her tunes, and she'd use those crazy tunings,
I love them. Yeah.
you know. What is that? Like I was like, I had no idea of what she was doing. I couldn't even imagine what her hand looked like when she was playing the chords. I would like look at the record cover and I'd be like trying to look at her hand and going, I wonder if she was playing that tune when they took you know what I mean? Like I was just grasping for straws,
Yeah.
which made which does make you dig really deep,
Yeah.
and so all those things. But I think if younger folks are able to use the technology. I mean, man, I'll tell you, when I want to figure stuff out, I
Mm-hmm.
love it.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love it.
sure.
'Cause I slow stuff down.
Go
Like
for
if
the
it's
shortcut. Yeah. I mean, you remember on records, we were like one, two, three phrases at a time, couple
oh
of
yeah,
notes at a time, off and on, taking the record on. This is the needle going on the record. And and people are like, "How did you learn that song?" It's like pretty much a couple of beats at a time. That's how we all do it. And
and
even
it was
Bonnie Raitt
something
was doing
we
it like that.
loved.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You listen to stuff, and it was something. It was also the other thing, though, too, is that it was something that you loved so deeply
Oh
that it
yeah.
was worth it, right?
I get in
You
trouble
loved
for
it.
it.
And this, yeah, me too,
When
right?
are you going to leave
Anything
the
else?
house?
Exactly.
Is that what you're going to do all
Exactly.
summer? Oh, yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I
We're gonna
finally have time. Yeah.
invest in some headphones for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. It was we did that. It was the same thing. Oh, my folks were great. My folks were unbelievably supportive, which was I was very
Oh,
lucky. You know, they
that's
they
awesome.
loved it. They were neither they were not had nothing to do with the music world, but they were both incredibly musical. You know, so
Nice.
they loved music.
Yeah. I've always loved alternate tunings. I've written hundreds and hundreds of songs in alternate tunings, and my excitement is it's like a whole different harmonic landscape. And I don't have to think about anything because I very rarely write a song to hire, or for hire. Uh, it's not like an assignment where someone says, "Here's a 32 bar tune. We want it in B flat. We would like to have some indirect resolution by bar six," and then we make sure there's a first and second ending, and do the coda. Make sure you do some indirect resolution, and it's not an
I've never done
assignment,
that.
right? If I'm writing from feeling, I want to feel something, and I could just hear one chord, and I'm off in another galaxy. I'm so happy, and I've got to follow these sounds and these feelings, and I move
Totally.
fingers around. Even when I'm in standard tuning, I'm just writing and feeling along. And I was studying with Mick Goodrick for 3 semesters when he was doing that mentoring thing with us all. And I
Yeah.
said to him in a very sheepish way, like, I never even took any composition classes when I was here at Berkeley. I was just a performance major, and I just feel things and find them. And he said, that's how you're supposed to write. I was like, oh, good.
I mean, I agree. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I mean, and actually, a lot of things that I've ever, like little ideas that come to me, are
Mm,
actually oftentimes come to me and almost like a weird, it sounds kind of, but it all, oftentimes they will come to me when I'm at some point of unconsciousness of what I'm doing. You know, I'll just be playing like
least resistance, it's
a
coming in.
horrifying image, but half the time I'll be like laying on the couch, like half asleep with the guitar, like sort of just sitting on me, and
No
I'm not really
resistance.
right. And I'm
It's
not
just
thinking,
seeping
I'm
in.
usually like, I'm either really bored, tired, and I'm sitting there and, my dog's laying at my feet, and I got a guitar on her in my lap still, and I'm sitting there just messing around, and I'm not, and then there's an unconscious thing that happens sometimes where like a thing will happen. I'll play something, whether it's probably accidentally like a cool voicing or something.
Yep, yep.
Um, that's kind of cool. I like that.
Because
It's like
changing
that's a
guitars so much, it's like sometimes my fingers go in different places than I intend because the neck width is different. I go, oh, that's something cool.
yes, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Mistakes. My mistakes, which are very plentiful,
Yes,
and continue to be, have yielded occasionally some good things.
they bring me to new worlds. I,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
always liked capos for that reason too. I mean, you can't get open strings in C sharp minor without it. you know?
I love, and that's another thing. I love capos have a sound. They make a sound. I love capos.
Yeah,
I
because it's like all of a sudden you're in a different range of the instrument. It's a beautiful texture.
changes the whole timbre of the guitar. It changes the way the guitar, it changes where
Yes,
the
yes.
standing frequencies are of the guitar, or it just, and they're beautiful. Like I love capos. And there's like I have this little guitar that it's a 1940s Gibson LG2,
Oh,
and
they're
it's
gorgeous.
and that guitar just sounds so beautiful with a capo,
Yeah, the tone's amazing on those.
right? They're just beautiful sounding guitar. I love mine so much, and I picked that guitar up as it's little and light, and it's like I can carry it around like a, it's just like a toy,
Yeah.
but it sounds so beautiful. Like
Now,
so,
you
so
probably from a young age were probably similar to me. It's like you were interested in the guitar and the sound it could make, and then if it was plugged in, what that sound could do, and then if it was plugged into pedals, what those sound could do, and
yeah,
then if it was going to a recording, what the producer could do to it versus the studio gear versus a mix versus mastering. Like, to me, to break down the sound and to get something on one of my records, or even to attempt to copy something, because I was touring for so long with different tribute bands like solo Beatles
yeah,
and
yeah,
actual Beatles,
right,
to match those tones and to get that stuff and decipher how can I best get this sound now for live. You had to
that,
go through that kind of stuff.
yeah,
And
that,
how do I represent, like if you were on the road with Paula Cole or any of the others, right? We did this for the studio. Now, how am I going to represent that in the live setting? And will it
right,
translate?
yeah, right, right.
Because like a
I just,
lot of the subtle things don't.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
right.
they get lost in the big venues and
I have always thought that must have been really fun because I know you're a huge Beatles fan, as am I, and amongst other people as
well,
well.
if you're into subtleties, you definitely like Johnny Smith and George Harrison and probably James Taylor.
Yeah. I just recently was my friend Duke Levine, who's a great guitar player. I play with Duke all the time. He's one of my closest friends and
Yeah.
one of my
Do you guys live near each other?
sorry.
Do you live near each
Wait,
other?
no, but yeah, both around Boston,
Oh,
but
okay.
not like close. But
Same town.
but not same town. But I live Natick and Duke's up in north of the city, and so we were just he's been like digging into some great classic '70s stuff that he loves, to try to just tap into that. And he's a huge, as am I, George Harrison fan. So we're like Duke had sent me a bunch of some footage of George stuff. It's just so great, like concert for Bangladesh and
Yeah.
uh, Wah Wah, and I mean that all of that stuff is so
Slide playing. Just
like
perfect. Yeah.
ridiculous. He defined his slide sound for pop rock. So that I mean, you hear people do it now, right? And oh, that's somebody trying to sound like George.
But they don't come anywhere near close because they don't have the right touch or the right emotion as they go to play it. The only two people I've ever heard sound like George are me and a guy named Mark Mann, who was in Jeff Lynne's group, who played for the Concert for George.
Oh
He
yeah, Mark Man,
was the
that's
only
right.
person who ever knocked my socks off sounding like George.
I
And he
love
nailed it every time in that concert. It was like scary.
Oh man, I love I love the songs, I love the songwriting. Playing is just I just I can't imagine the I'm a full lover of all the Beatles. I love Ringo, I
Yeah,
love George, I need
yeah.
them all there.
Yeah, I need them all there too. Yeah, in fact, if you take any one of them out, the thing falls apart.
Exactly.
And it's happened where we had to have like a substitute drummer once, and it was just horrible. It sounded like Beatles GB. I was like, forget it. If this is the way this band continues, I'm out of here. And it's almost like Ringo's got the best parts. It's amazing how
Yeah,
he makes the song.
I completely agree.
Absolutely amazing.
They were great. It was just one of those. I think it was one of those. There's been bands in every genre that had that magical connection.
What was so cool about them too, though, was their intelligence and their humor, and they didn't care. They weren't out to be rock stars or guitar gods. That was long before that. They were just trying to be entertainers, and they were impressed by their parents' generation of music, which was Rodgers and Hammerstein and Cole Porter and all these people. So they were inundated playing thousands and thousands of songs to do all these gigs, all these hours every night. and they learned all these amazing chords and all these beautiful melodies, and they were like apprentices to how to write great stuff by
Yeah.
absorbing all that great stuff. So everybody thinks they're so self-taught and they never learned anything, but that is quite an education. And they used a really good book. They used Bert Whedon's like Learn
Yeah.
Guitar in a Day.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's all these beautiful inversions on how to hold your hands and how to have good technique. And they had it all, and they'd laugh about it like, well, if we can do it, anybody can do it, because we're not anything great. And I thought, oh, great, I'll do it too. Like it wasn't this hierarchy of you don't belong. And I think
Yeah.
that's what gets me upset about anything in the world is this us and them feeling, or this you don't belong and you're not in our club or you're not in our thing. They were very inclusive, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and they were about, you know, what are you doing? And oh, you're on our tour too. What is it that you do? It wasn't competitive. They were trying to learn from each other. It was
I
very
really
supportive.
think that that whole period of, I think there was that spirit. I think, I mean, I might be looking back at it with, I don't think so though.
Yeah.
But I do think that that period of music, I think there was an openness because things hadn't been codified yet. Like,
Mm,
you know, this is what a rock song should be. This is what a pop song should be. This is, I mean, I mean, there've always been pop songs, but I do think that it was before it had been decided by people other than musicians, like
yes.
people who work at record companies, or A&R people, and to
Right.
me, when the business started getting in too deep in it, that's when it all kind of started going south. When you know
Yeah.
there were experts that were not the songwriters or the musicians.
Right. The assembly line, brill
Yeah.
building, and all that cool stuff.
Yeah, and I mean when the musicians were the experts and the songwriters and the producers were
Mm-hmm.
truly experts. They were brilliant,
Yeah.
and when other people in the business started defining well, this is what we need to have a pop song. This is what we need to have a hit, and it's like that just for me, that's when it got gross. You know, I'm sure that there's a million arguments against what I'm saying are people, but
I felt a little dog hair from kissing my dogs before, so I'm doing this, and it's looking like I've got a mustache. Have you seen
no,
these?
I don't see it.
Have you seen the studio effects that you can put on? And it's like if I do this, I look a little bit like Danny Harrison. You can put
I
on
have
these little.
not seen that. You see,
Right.
it was so far beyond my ability.
Well, no, you just go to preferences and background effects, and then
Okay, well,
go down to studio effects, and they give you.
if I did that, this is what would happen. If I did that, I would somehow accidentally like turn my computer off and wipe clean the memory, and I would have to put a new computer. I'm not bad with that stuff. So, but that's good to know. I'll check that out.
When you need one. If
That's
if yours happens to fall off while you're asleep, you can always put another one on.
take one on you.
Right. Now, tell me about what keeps you going. How do you stay inspired and just keep your spirits up when sometimes it's such a slog to
I
be a
have no
creative
choice.
person in a world sometimes where it's not appreciated. Like you have to really turn on that self-appreciation.
I think like I think it's I can't if I look at the best case and worst case scenarios, I'm like I won't find a better case. I won't find a better a better place to be, even if this is bad. You know
Mm.
what I mean? I don't know if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Well,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
no, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of always, to be honest, I'm always a little fearful. I'm always like, sometimes like if I have a period of time where there's not a lot of work happening, I'm like, I find myself going, oh, this is it. I'm done. They finally discovered that I'm a total shyster and that I suck and that nobody again. I feel that, I will feel that way. And
Mm.
and then I'll kind of freak myself out and then I'll be like, oh, okay, well, calls are going and somebody wants me to play something or wants me to do something. but also at this point, another thing. It's an interesting question because I have been thinking about that a lot lately. Also because of the time in my life. I'm 59. You know, and I kind of feel like, well, I'm already feeling okay. Like I feel kind of like, you know what? I got through most of my life being a musician, so even if everything goes pear shaped at this point, I did all right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we win.
And I know that that probably sounds kind of fatalistic, but it's not. It's not that. It's actually kind of very. It's kind of happy and kind of gives me some peace.
Oh
But
yeah.
things are good. I mean, I'm as long as I can continue to play music that I love. I realize like sometimes when we all have times where we get down, right? Or where you
Oh yeah.
feel like you know like, ah, man, this is hard. I suck. This is, I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm like, this is like, there's just all this, just life gets to you sometimes, right? And that's a part.
Absolutely right.
That's a part of being of
Yeah.
doing. I think doing what we do. It's part of being an artist, and the victory for me is surviving that.
Yes.
Kind of
And
going,
so, what are some of the tactics or tricks
oh
or
well, what
soothing?
yes.
How do you feed that when you're hungry for that?
What I do is that's interesting because what I do is like that's why I learned. I think that's why I started getting into lap steel because I found that I was being a side person, and I was doing that, playing with a lot of great artists who were really doing the thing that they loved, and I was a part of that and loved doing that. But then I got really like I went through a period of where I was very it's just like I didn't like I didn't like how I was playing guitar, or not didn't like it. I was just not.
You were hungry for something else.
Yeah, I felt like I didn't know how to move forward, or I just kind of felt like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, like, I'm not necessarily loving doing what I'm doing right now, but I didn't know where to go. And then I was on the road, I was on tour, and a friend of mine had this lap steel, and he
Wow.
had it, and he said, we were at his house hanging out when we were on the road. We'd gone out for a couple drinks and had some dinner, and I found this thing, and I got the lap steel, and for some reason, it just resonated with me. I strummed like the first time I strummed it, I was like, it was in a C6 tuning, which like I love a lot of different kinds of music, and when I was a kid, I heard a lot of. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, not middle of nowhere. It was a great place to grow up, but it was very very small town, and there
New
was
York.
had some, yeah, Western New York State, around Buffalo, and there was there I loved country music. I mean, it was not all I loved, but it was part what I loved. I loved everything, and so I played that C6 tuning, and I was like, oh man, I just loved the sound of the chord. And then I put the bar down on it. I put the bar down the neck, and I started sliding it around, and I was like, oh man, I just like that. You know how you were saying you hear one chord or one voicing,
And
like
you're gone.
that open C6 chord for me was just like that was just like.
Bing.
And that's the other thing is because I don't think like that's the other thing where I would say like a good part, like if there was something that for many people that I would have known at that time in my life or when I was younger would have possibly been the uncoolest thing you could ever do would to love a C6 like because at that when you're young that's not like necessarily the
Yeah.
but that actually made me like it even more. Like I
Yeah.
was like, I kind of like that. I kind of like
The
it.
contrast, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I liked that I was doing like I liked the sound of this, and I said, well, I'm going to follow this because it's really making me happy. And every day there would be some little victory. Like I'd be like, oh wow, I can play a four chord right here. I can play like this is how you can play like a 2-5-1 by slanting the bar, go da da da, and then resolve chord. And it was fun. It was like being 12 years old again and figuring
Yeah.
out how to play a C seventh chord.
Bill Levitt was a master of the lap steel. He used to
Yeah,
do beautiful chord solos on the lap steel.
I know, and I wish he was amazing, and he
I
came up
know.
with a really cool tuning. He came
Yeah.
up like he had a very specific tuning that I so would have loved to have gotten to know. To
Mike Ide knew what it was too, and
It
he
was like
just
a
recently
diminished
passed.
tuning. It
Was
was like
it?
a diminished tuning, and because what it would do is that with different slants and combinations, you could get a lot of chords
Okay.
that were because you're playing slide. It's like you're basically playing everything with
All six
this.
strings. Yes, I
Yeah,
know.
like one finger. It's
Yeah.
like, and so you
Now
have
you're playing like Joni Mitchell. That's why you want to go to another tuning and just
right.
move it
Yes,
around. Yeah.
exactly. So it was very, very interesting in that like then the thing that was crazy is that when I started getting into playing steel, it took me like guitar took me when I was a kid. And then the steel really inspired my guitar. Then I started going like, oh,
Absolutely.
this would just sound really cool with steel. So then I'd grab my guitar and then this lap steel or any, whatever instrument. I mean, if maybe it was French horn, I don't know, whatever you're into, right?
Sure.
It like
It all adds up.
it all right. And then lap
Yeah.
steel took me to this place of going like, there's all these sounds that I can make with a lap steel that you can't make with a guitar.
Nope.
You just can't make it.
Yeah.
Just the nature of, it's like a little 2x4 with strings on it,
So what are
which
some of your favorite tunings on it?
I love C6.
Okay.
I love C6, and there's like there's this tune that I've been using, which I've been kind of just like it's called a B11, which is a new tuning, and it's like got a fourth in it. I've been and then
Cool.
standard tunings E, the E like the classic E open E tuning, which is basically it's just an open E chord, right?
Yeah.
And so you can just take even like a standard set of strings and put it on a lap steel. The heavier strings are going to be better because they.
Yeah. I have one. I remember there was one on Craigslist and I wanted to buy it and I offered a trade to this woman. And I said, would you be interested in trading for this lap steel? I'll give you this guitar. And she wrote me back and she said, I'm not interested in the trade, but how about this? Let me give you this lap steel and would you just give me some of your albums? I was like,
Yes.
you're kidding, right? Like I wanted to bring her hundreds of
Oh,
records,
that's so
copies,
cool.
just like
That's
boxes and boxes.
great. That's
So
so
yeah,
great.
I've definitely put some of that in some songs, but it's been very minimum, like just some kind of sound and effect and
No,
but
that's
watching you play's got me wanting to do some more textural things. I think it would be really cool,
oftentimes
especially
that's
with
all you need to do.
you're using your volume
Yeah.
on it too to do the swells, but you could also use a volume pedal, I guess.
I actually use a volume pedal primarily, but what I
Okay.
do is I'm constantly adjusting the tone.
Okay.
Because in me, it's pretty simple. I mean, the reason I do is that a lot of like the steels that I love to sound on the most of are much older steels, and the pickups the pickups that I have are these kind of big overwound single coil pickups that are pretty bright. They sound
Right.
amazing. They're
Yeah.
beautiful, but they're bright. Not for my ear. If you need the tone wide open, so a
Right.
lot. I'm constantly riding the tone to get the right amount of brightness that I want in there.
Yeah, depending upon where you are.
Depending on where I am. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I
And
do that with guitar. Like I'll
oh
keep
yeah,
my treble up on the amp extra
yeah,
and bring it back on my guitar when I want to
yes,
when I want to play with a pick, and then open it way up when I want to play with
yeah,
my fingers to
yeah,
get some.
exactly.
But
You-
I wonder if you've ever wanted this. I always wished, and a friend of mine was going to make the El Pass pickups, and he died, so he's not going to do it. But I've
Right.
always wished that I had a separate tone control for the bottom three strings and a separate volume and tone for the top three strings. Because I would take a little bit off of the tone on the top and I'd always keep it open on the bottom because I like the clarity on those low strings, you know?
Yeah.
And I've always hated using my guitar volume as a volume because you lose your tone.
We have
all the tone would go away. I was like, this is the worst design ever. And then the Godin guitar that we have at school has a treble bleed.
yes,
So I was like, oh, there's that solutions,
yeah.
so that was cool.
I
But
think
did you ever wish you had a different tone control for the bottom three
yeah.
strings?
Oh
How
man,
cool would that
lap
be?
steel,
I wrote to Gretsch a
especially
few times saying, Gretsch, you'd be the one to do it. And they never even answer me.
company. Yeah, yeah. That's a really that's it. I've
It's these
admired
subtleties. They don't go for the masses, but
that, but I have had that exact experience with lap steel,
wow.
where I really like. I want the higher, the unwound strings
Yep.
to be a little less cutting in, but I love the clarity of the low strings also because I use a thumb pick sometimes when I play lap steel, but most of the time I play with my fingers. And
Nice.
the thing about picks is that you get finger picks is that you get a beautiful clarity from
Yes.
clarity. And but again, like I started playing lap steel in a sort of an accidental way. I didn't do it by sort of I didn't nobody said to me in the beginning, well, you got to use finger picks, man. You got to use finger picks. You know,
Okay.
so so I didn't. I just started playing it, and I didn't. I didn't like when I started playing lap steel. I figured like, oh, here's this instrument. I'll fool around. I'll pick it up and mess around with it once in a while, and if nothing else, it looks cool. I'll hang it on the wall. And they do look cool, right? They're beautiful. They're beautiful. These like old. Like this is a 1937 Epiphone Electar.
Nice.
I mean, they're so cool.
They are.
They're
They're
just
super cool.
they're amazing instruments, but they're very they're it's a handful. The problem is that they're so cool and they're so fun and they're enticing to play at first until you get it, and then you start going, I can't do anything on this, but like slide you know, and that's the
Right.
problem. You really got to learn how to play it. You got to learn scales, you got to learn shapes, you got to learn chords, just like
Okay.
you
Wow.
know, it's you got to really love it. If you're not loving it, if you don't love it, it's just like anything else.
You won't go in that detailed, yeah. But I
Yeah,
like the way you found that because you were looking for something to inspire you. I mean,
yeah.
all my life people have told me you're interested in too many things and you're like not going to get anywhere. And I thought after several decades of being depressed over it, there's nowhere to get. Like the more people I talk to on this podcast, they're like, there's nowhere to get. There's like nobody behind the door that you think you can't get through. Nobody really knows anything any more or less, and doing what you're doing is doing it. Like a life in music is making the music. Even Paul McCartney talks about that. It's like here I am on this talk show talking about what I'm doing, but I'm like a carpenter who would rather be back in his shed making the chairs. Instead, I'm talking about how I make chairs. It's like
Oh,
I want to go make the chair.
yeah. Yeah,
So
and you
it's
can tell him, yeah, he's just like somebody like he is so driven to write songs. That just turns him on. He just loves it.
But he's also about complete self permission. And I think that's so vital for an artist. And at first, we're told it's wrong to have your own original ideas or to be so against something that has always been. But that's what an artist does. An artist is breaking through new ground. And
Yeah,
he gets more flack than any of us
yeah,
constantly because, again, he was 20 years old when he made it. And it was a old people's game. Remember in the 60s when we were growing up, everything was black and white and everybody had crew cuts and it
yeah,
was a very different world. And then all of a sudden it became about young people. So now the baby boom generation has grown up and they're the oldest generation instead
yeah,
of the youngest, the biggest population, I mean. And so his whole life, even when he had his small mind of it, like, oh, I don't want to be singing She Loves You when I'm 30. And it's like he thought he was going to be an old man at 30. So he keeps expanding. These guys are the first rock and rollers
yeah,
to be allowed to get old. And people have been saying, don't you think you're over it when he was 30, when he was 35, when he was 40, when he was 45? When are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? You got enough money. Why are you doing this? He's doing it because he loves it.
yeah.
He's doing it because he's amazing. And his self permission is over the top. it's like he doesn't think he's great at everything, but he's going to allow himself to experiment and to have fun. And that's what I love about all the instruments that I dabble with. You know, I can be a whole band on my own records. I can play guitar, bass, drums, write the
Of
song,
course.
do all the
It's your
background
record.
vocals,
You
do
can
the
do
engineer,
whatever
do the
you
producer,
want.
be the label, be the producer. I don't care. I'm doing the music. This is what I've always wanted to do.
That's you. Absolutely. It would be a crime if you didn't. With
And each of those things inspires the other thing, like you said. So when any one thing is like, it's not happening, I'll go to this other thing. And I always admired that about Joni Mitchell, because you'd hear if she got stuck with the music, she'd go paint. And I thought, what's my
yes.
thing? I don't have a paint, but the studio is paint, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I completely agree, and I like yeah. I mean, I like all kinds of stuff too. And you know what? You could somebody. I love all kinds of stuff, and you could say, well, you're trying to do too much stuff. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm sorry if you think I'm doing too much stuff, because
yes,
I do,
yeah.
and and I'm gonna and like the other thing is too. I think like, oh, look at a puppy.
That's a little boy.
Oh,
This
nice.
is this is Romeo. Yeah, it's
Oh,
not too much stuff. It's following the fun, following the joy. And even
it,
like you were saying before, it's like each thought is a choice. It's like I don't have to think this anymore because it really upsets me. You know,
yeah,
I could
exactly.
change my thoughts and have a completely different moment and build the day on moments, you know? Like
Yeah,
just find the best in every moment and
yeah.
focus on those instead. We're like here to focus, here to create, here to have fun.
Yes, and I think that's like that's the great part of like talking about this stuff because you kind of do it re-inspires you to just kind of go, you know what? I don't. All I can do is follow my follow that inspiration, whatever it is, whether it's whether it's like and it's not easy. It's not
It's
easy.
about whatever you say it is, right?
Yeah,
That's the thing. You define it, you live it, it's yours.
exactly. And, the other thing about like I think with like Paul McCartney's like those things you were talking like how people kept saying that oh you're too old to be you're too old to be a rock star when are you going to give this up like again those are that's the thing that I talk about like those all of those things that I mean I think I could be wrong about this but all those things were things that the music business that people that were not musicians imposed on an artist, right?
Yes, yes.
Like
They
like
don't make
like
any sense.
athletes. Right now, it makes sense. It makes sense that an athlete has a limited because their bodies are limited physically, right?
Sure, yeah.
But still, even beyond that, they have, they've a great athlete has this amazing knowledge and wisdom that they can pass on as coaches or whatever, in a million
Coach.
ways. But it's like, but musicians can literally, I mean, as long as you don't completely lose, yeah, musicians can make music to the end of time, and those are things that musicians understand.
Yeah.
you know, But people in the business world don't understand or care.
Well,
For
they
them,
think they yes,
commodity to be bought and sold. And that's why, for me,
yeah.
the music business has essentially kind of destroyed the ability for us to make money as artists,
Well, yeah,
So
they definitely screwed themselves.
we have to take control of it ourselves. And that's what having a computer is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So it's more than ever, there's not a better time or reason to make music other than just to make art.
Yeah.
And
It's
because
always
ultimately
been about that.
yourself, you are your own record company, you're your own
That's
man,
the best part, yeah.
you know, and
For
it's
a long time.
really, in some ways it's really freeing.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
that's what I meant about the Beatles being so young, and then all of a sudden everything became about young people.
yeah,
The industry still thinks it's about young people, and it isn't necessarily because the
some
Stones,
of
the
it is
Beatles, all
right, but
those guys are still making music. They're still vital. And
yeah,
the thing is, there we have had older blues players, older jazz players. We accepted that in different genres, but we never accepted it with rock and roll till now,
yeah,
because Ringo and Paul are in their 80s and they're
yeah.
still rocking. So it's like, there you go.
Really
They're
proves it,
always
right?
always proving the naysayers wrong.
Yeah, yeah, I
That's what I
love.
love about that.
I mean, when I was a kid, I saw Chuck Berry. I saw Chuck Berry
Yeah, he
when
was older.
he was when he was much older. He was like, and
BB
he
King.
was amazing.
Yeah,
Chuck Berry was he was
he
you
was
know
Chuck
he,
Berry.
yeah, he had a pickup band. He had a pickup band for the night, from
That's
somewhere,
awesome.
and he blew my mind. He
That's
was
awesome.
so great, and you don't need to be 20 to play rock,
No, it's the whole thing doesn't make any sense.
Speaking of great songwriters, Chuck Berry,
Yeah.
great one of the greatest. His lyrics. I listen to Chuck. I listen to Chuck. I I'm serious. It's like you listen to those songs. His lyrics are
They're so
just
fun. Yeah.
incredible. Great, great. I didn't get that when I was a kid.
No.
I loved Chuck Berry's. I loved the riffs and the root, the feel, and the groove. But then
Mm.
you read his lyrics, and man, they're really incredible.
It's super.
Yeah.
What do you wish you could always talk about on something like this that nobody remembers to ask?
Uh, no, that is a good.
Or what would you like to?
I think actually what I don't get to talk about a lot
Mm.
is exactly what we're talking about. Everything we've said,
That's
actually.
good.
I
That's
love
great.
what we're talking about. I
Yeah.
mean it truly. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it as an easy out. I mean that. Like, what do you think about? For me, the whole key of a lot of these things is to try to be, as an artist, no matter what art you're doing, to try to shut out the noise, the negative noise that we're always can get in there and disrupt your flow of making music, making art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really what I think is the most important thing, and to try to be impervious to all that noise, to all that distraction, and to stay focused on what you love. What do I love? What makes me happy? What makes
Yeah.
inspired, makes me feel, what makes the hair stand up in the back of my neck. Like,
Yeah.
if that's really what I want to talk about, because I
That's
think,
what we're after.
and it's easy to start thinking about all these other things, like start thinking about, like, especially being around, like the business and all that stuff, and that's important. Everybody's got to try and figure out how to make a living at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that stuff will come if you do the art first. If you make the art first.
We'd probably have more tolerance if we fed ourselves first. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Give
yeah,
yourself the music first and then.
yes. I really think that. I mean, I don't know if I'm right, but that's what I think. I mean, it's
Well,
worked. For my
that's what.
career, I've kind of, I've kind of kept that as a central thing. I mean, it's like I've slammed into walls and gone off the road before, but I've generally kind of kept that and it's for whatever my life or my career is, it's sort of worked for me. Sort of, it's not perfect, but
No, it has. It has worked, and it depends on who's telling the story, right? That's the problem with some of us independents is that we don't have the publicist that spins everything to make us look extraordinary, and we don't get enough kudos anywhere, maybe just from our loved ones, and we feel like that's not enough. But people like Elton John used to get hundreds of thousands of kudos, and still it wasn't enough. So, the whole acceptance thing that I love about Paul is all of this happiness and all of this stuff is an inside job, and you know we can all tell ourselves awful things about our history or our path or our story or what choices we've taken and make ourselves so miserably sad as if we did everything all wrong. But there was never any path and there was never any right and there was never any manual to say, if you do this, you'll be super happy. It's tune into yourself, like you're saying, with every moment and look for the goosebumps and look for the joy. And if this is going a little off course, you just adjust.
yeah.
And you don't count it as a giant mistake. I mean, usually it's not life or death, and it's not a big problem. conundrum in ourselves, or a belief on what is success, or
Yeah.
what is worth, why are we doing all this? I have students who say, why would I take all the time, hundreds of hours to make an album that nobody's going to hear? It's like, because you wanted to make it? Like, what's
Oh,
wrong with that? You know, it's like I always wanted to make it. I don't mean make it like in the music business. I mean, I did that too, but I wanted to make the record. I'm not going to not make it because somebody might not hear it. It's like, who's hearing anything these days?
you,
Everybody's bombarded with
you
everything.
what you just said right there, that's like for me, that's
Mm,
that's like that's the best articulated. What you just said is perfect. It's like because it's funny, my wife, who's a great composer, she's like she's she's like, who cares if she goes, I don't care if anybody's going to hear it. I want to know what this sounds like. I
I
want to know
love
what
that.
this is going to sound like. I don't care if anybody's going to hear it.
Consuelo.
Yeah,
All
she's
right.
she writes. She is absolutely. I think she's so brilliant. She's an amazing composer and amazing player, and she's
Mm-hmm.
just a force. She sits and writes. I know because I sit on the couch next to her, like when I'm being lazy, like sitting there, like looking at amps, listening to her write, and I'm
That's
going,
awesome.
I had him going, that's what I should be doing right now. And so,
That's great.
that's what she says. Because I've said that exact thing
Mm-hmm.
in my low times. I've said, you know what? Yeah, I'd like to make a record. I'd like to make a record, but what's the point? I mean, nobody's going to care. Nobody will want to hear it. And then if they do, all they'll do is shred it. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I mean, I know that's like dark, right? But
No, I was
that
wondering what you meant by shred it, like put
oh,
it in a recycle machine or
yeah, yeah, or just like
eat the credit card.
let's say how much it sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
So,
people are going to say that anyway. I mean,
exactly.
there's no consensus. This is why it's so important to have our own backs, and to believe in our own work, and to love our life for what we've given our life to. I mean,
Yeah,
you win because you've had a life in music. I
yeah,
win because I chose music and it's always been there for me and I've always loved it too. I mean,
yeah,
that's the win,
yeah,
that we get to do this, you
yeah,
know? And
absolutely.
there was never any, it has to be like this and it means this, and if it's only on the cover of Rolling Stone or you only have $1 million. It was never about that. Even for the Beatles, it was never about that. It was just about, I wonder if we can make a record someday. I wonder if we could get a better gig. It'd be so cool to get on that tour. It was these little steps. They weren't, we're going to conquer the world, you know. I mean, they'd
Yeah,
say, where are we going, boys? To the
yeah,
topmost
yeah,
of the
yeah.
topmost. But they weren't serious like that was going to happen. It blew their minds when
I
that
love
happened.
that. I love there was one scene where they were interviewing them, like when they had first come, and they're like talking about what they were going to do
Yeah.
when their time had expired. What Ringo was talking about opening a hair salon.
Yeah, a string of them, in fact, you know. And George was, I hope to have enough money to start a business of my own, you know.
Yeah,
Like it's just like,
exactly.
it's just,
But that just goes to show you, and that was very sincere. Like I
oh,
think people,
absolutely.
we don't
And what are
know.
you going to do when the bubble bursts? You know,
Yeah,
it's like,
we don't know if we're going to be here, if anybody's going to even know who we are next year, the year after.
right, right.
They truly didn't. I think they were as amazed by everything that was happening to them as everybody else was.
They said they were the eye of the hurricane. You know,
Yeah,
there was just the four of them, and only the four of them knew what they were going through and
I
what was
think
happening.
probably a lot of people. I think probably a lot of people from that period of time probably felt that way too. You know, I think a lot of people that were achieving that sort of stardom because of modern media and TV.
Mm,
I mean, they must have been floored. They must have just been blown away by what was happening.
so amazing. I just love having them as role models. I'm so glad they happened first.
Totally,
Me. Like they were like my first musical influence at 3 years old.
I totally hear
My
you.
older uncles had some of the very first things that came out, and the bootlegs and the VJ records and the single. And then I turned 4 in '64, and they were on Ed Sullivan, and it just exploded. I didn't even know what the word musician was. To me, it was like, I want to be a Beatle. I want to have that much fun, and I want to be that creative, and I want to be, you know,
Mhm.
just a fun-loving Beatle. I just love to have that kind of creative life, you know. And so in my own head, I've like made my own little space about it, what that means. It wasn't maybe that way for them, as easy as whatever. But
Really, but it
thank you
was,
so much.
Warren, it was really fun. Thank you so much.
You're awesome, Kevin, and thank you so much
I mean,
for doing this.
yeah, I'm flattered that you'd want to have me on. So I mean it. It's great. Well, good. And it's great that we had this time to get to chat a little bit. We
Yeah,
never get to
first
do that, right? We
first
never
time
get to do
ever.
that at Berkeley,
No,
right?
there you are.
We're always on our way somewhere. It's like, hey, say, hey, how you doing? So,
Yeah, yeah,
great. All
yeah.
right. Well,
It
thank
was
you
great.
so much.
Thank you. This is great.
Yeah,
Ciao.
same. Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye.